I remember landing at a lonely space station orbiting a moon. It was quiet and seemed abandoned. I walked slowly down the hall and entered the next room when all of a sudden, the lights flashed, the gravity broke down, and bullets started flying everywhere. Space pirates had set a deadly trap, and I was having the time of my life. It's no secret that I love Starfield, and moments like the pirate death trap are the reason that I think Starfield is so amazing as it is today. But it could be even better by doubling down and adding to the most immersive elements in the game. Here are 5 major updates that would turn Starfield from one of my favorite games in the last couple years into one of my favorite games of all time. And question of the day, what are updates you're hoping to see from Starfield in the near or long-term future? Let me know in the comments below and let's just geek out together. Let's get started with my number 5 most wanted feature to be added to Starfield. I love landing on new planets in Starfield, whether that's touching down and looking at all the creatures, or just like the vistas, finding cool mountains or coasts. It's all really cool stuff to see, but there isn't really a great way to track these discoveries once you found them. So, what if Starfield took a page out of the No Man's Sky book? In No Man's Sky, there's a discovery catalog and a more customizable feature called Wonders, and it allows you to create custom tags for things you've discovered and save all of the info for later. It makes every cool discovery that much cooler to find because you have a way to log it and come back to it later. So let's say you find a planet in Starfield that would be perfect to place like a cottage right by the coast, or there's just a really cool mountain range that you'd love to remember and revisit later in your travels. This personalized catalog would allow you to tag that and then see it later so you could find that exact planet later and exactly where you landed. And to add to this, I would love a way to display these discoveries in our outposts. So I've been thinking a lot about this recently just as I've been playing, and there's these like digiframes in universe where like photos are displayed. So imagine if our photo mode pictures could get uploaded to those or to like bigger posters in your outposts, and you could see pictures of you and your buddies on all your adventures. I just keep thinking of this like Starfield outpost office space where you have like all of these frames on your desk and it's got you and your buddies and cool stuff you've seen, cool moments from quests in the game. I think that'd be awesome. Moving on to number 4, it's kind of a double whammy here, but there is no radio system currently in Starfield. I did talk about this in my last Starfield video, which I'll link at the top of the screen right now. A radio system would be a massive upgrade to Starfield in 2 ways. So number 1 is more quality of life. Think of all the times you run back and forth to quest givers just to complete quests. If you had a radio that you could actually communicate with characters in universe, you wouldn't have to go back to the planet where you picked the quest up to actually progress it or even finish it. That would also help address the loading screen criticism, which isn't a huge deal for me, but for anyone that bothers, this would be a cool way to help minimize that. But the number 2 reason that a radio system would be great is more for immersion and just entertainment while you're exploring. Like Fallout Radio, an actual in-game radio to tune into different stations would be so great for exploring and really kind of seems like a huge miss for the game. Now, I did shout this out in my last video, so I don't mean to be a broken record, but there already is a starfieldradio.com, which I highly recommend you checking out. Link in the description below if you want to look at it. But here's hoping Bethesda sees something like a Starfield radio and actually gets this added to the game as well. All right, we're pulling out the big guns here for my top 3 most anticipated features to be added to Starfield sometime in the future. So number 3 is interplanetary travel and deep space events. One of the biggest misses, I think, for Starfield right now is I love building spaceships, but the problem is there isn't a whole lot to do in space. So a great fix here would be twofold. Number 1, add the option to long travel between planets. Now, I know you might be thinking that sounds kind of crazy, but if you've ever played Dragon's Dogma 2, they have a really interesting fast travel system where basically you can hire these carts and then you can just sit on it for however long it takes you to get to wherever you're going, or you can like skip time, but there's a chance in that time while you're like napping is what they call it, something can happen. You can get attacked by goblins, so you have to jump out of the wagon and defend it. So why not apply that same theory to Starfield? When you're doing the long travel, you can either move around your ship, talk to your companions, do some crafting, progress your research bench, and of course, if you want, you can speed up time by just going to sleep. But in that time while you're sleeping, there's a chance to spawn dynamic events like pirates attacking you, or maybe another ship needs help, or what would be really cool, and maybe a bit of a reach, would be if the ship actually had like problems with it where things broke down, so you had to like jump out of your ship and fix them and get back in. While I don't think this would address every issue with like deep space not having a lot going on, this would at least give you a reason to exist in your ship a little bit, walk around it, navigate it, and then dynamic events would just add a reason to actually use your ship. Importantly, this is not something I would want to see be a mandatory thing and like fast travel's gone entirely. It would just be a cool optional feature to somehow implement if that was possible, just so that it was something other than fast traveling if you wanted more time in your ship. Coming in controversially at number 2, I'm sure a lot of people will be surprised about this because this is number 1 for a lot of people, is POI variety refresh. So, POIs right now are very static. And while I've played for a few hundred hours in Starfield and haven't gotten bored, I can totally understand the criticism that these feel too static and too predictable. If you see an abandoned research station or an outpost or something like that, you already know what it's going to be, down to the enemy placement. That can get stale fast. What's really cool about this as an update for Starfield is I'm not even sure we need new stuff added to the procedural generation. We just need those existing pieces to be more randomized. So take everything, throw it in a blender, let enemy placement be more random, let loot be more random, and the actual components of different outposts and science stations look different when you come upon them. This would go such a long way to just making exploration feel more valuable in that you wouldn't know what you're coming into. You'd have a rough idea, but when you got there, the layout would be completely random. That would just add so much more legs. Okay, just before we get to the number one most desired feature in Starfield in the future, I just wanted to say thank you so much for stopping by, and if you're enjoying this and you're a geek about Starfield just like me, I'd love for you to consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. Let's get to number one. Okay. Even the police are coming to hear my number one. I recently made a video on how to build an outpost the easy way, which I'll link at the top of the screen right now. And one of the pretty consistent comments was, this helps to build an outpost, but why do I actually need one? That's a great question. For me, I just like to do it, but the actual game progression need for it is pretty minimal. You can buy basically anything you could possibly need from vendors, so the need to set up complex cargo lines just isn't super pressing. So I would love to see that changed. As an important call out, which rhymes with Fallout, so I never really engaged with the Fallout Sim settlement mod, but with that in mind, I'd love to see an updated outpost system where you have to like manage your crew's food, happiness. Maybe you can send them out on missions that are just sort of randomly generated things that collect resources for you, but basically just more to engage with the system. Kind of like Fallout Shelter, if you've played that, it would be cool to have a little mini game. Again, completely optional, but it would be a great way to deepen this. And similar to the interplanetary travel dynamic events, imagine if there were dynamic outpost events. So imagine getting a call on your radio that doesn't exist yet, and you're told that your cargo link is under attack and needs help in another system. Or maybe it gets grounded on another planet and you need to help the cargo link repair so that it can get back to transporting materials. That is probably a little bit unrealistic, but you know what? Who cares? It's fun. Ultimately, just more reason to care about this system from a gameplay perspective would be amazing. And also, I would love to see a system where we can actually reclaim POIs and make them our own outposts, but then different POI types would have certain bonuses to your outposts that you build there. So for an example, an abandoned science outpost, it costs half the resources for fabricator recipes, a comm station, your cargo links go twice as fast, things like that. If the POI proc gen and outpost systems were updated, oh man, we'd be eating good. And finally, if you're enjoying Starfield but feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the game, check out this video right here for 19 goals for you to chase when you're bored or overwhelmed in Starfield. I'll see you there in just a couple seconds. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Dylan. This is Beep Boop Loot. We'll see you in the next one.